Dravidians are native speakers of any of the Dravidian languages of South Asia. There are around 220 million native speakers of Dravidian languages. They formed the majority of the population of South India. Dravidian-speaking people are natively found in India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Nepal, Maldives, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. Historically, the word Dravida is used to denote the geographical region of South India, and was devoid of any ethnic or linguistic identity. In Prakrit, words such as Damila, Dameda, Damila, and Damila, evolved from Tamila, could have been used to denote an ethnic identity. Tamil has a literary tradition dating back to the 3rd century BCE. The 3rd century BCE onwards, or the development of large Dravidian political states, Chola dynasty, Pandya dynasty, Chera dynasty and a number of smaller states, the Satavahana dynasty, Rashtrakuta dynasty, Western Chalukya Empire, Kakatiya dynasty, Hoysala Empire, the Vijayanagara Empire and the Mysore Kingdom were established by the Dravidian people. The Chola Empire was one of the biggest maritime empires in medieval India, stretching from southern India to Southeast Asia including Philippines, Malaysia, southern Thailand and Indonesia. Medieval Tamil guilds and trading organizations like the Ayavul and Manigramam played an important role in the Southeast Asia trade. Traders and religious leaders traveled to Southeast Asia and played an important role in the cultural Indianization of the region. Locally developed scripts such as Grantha and Pallava script induced the development of many native scripts such as Khmer, Javanese Kawi script, Babayan and Thai. The largest Dravidian ethnic groups are the Tamil people from Tamil Nadu and Sri Lanka, the Kannada people from Karnataka, the Telugu people from Andhra Pradesh, the Malayalam people from Kerala, and the Tulu people from Karnataka. Certain communities of Marathi people from Maharashtra are considered as Scytho-Dravidians. Dravidian visual art is dominated by stylized temple architecture in major centers, and the production of images of stone and bronze sculptures. The Nataraja sculpture from the Chola period has become notable as a symbol of Hinduism. Etymology. The Sanskrit word Dravida is used to denote the geographical region of South India. Southern Brahmins are known as Panchadravida while northern Brahmins are known as Panchagauda, denoting geographical region. In Prakrit, words such as Damila, Dameda, Damila, and Damila, which later evolved into Tamila, could have been used to denote an ethnic identity. It is unclear if it was of self-designation or a term denoted by outsiders. Epigraphic evidence of an ethnic group termed as such is found in ancient India, where a number of inscriptions have come to light datable from the 6th to the 5th century BCE mentioning Damela or Dameda persons. In the well-known Hathagamfa inscription of the Kalinga ruler Karavela refers to a Timaya Samgata dated to 150 BCE. It also mentions that the League of Tamil Kingdoms had been in existence 113 years before then. In Amaravati in present-day Andhra Pradesh there is an inscription referring to a Damila Vanya datable to the 3rd century CE. Another inscription of about the same time in Nagarjunakonda seems to refer to a Damila. A third inscription in Kanari caves refers to a Damila Garini. In the Buddhist Jataka story known as Akiti Jataka there is a mention to Damila Ratha. Thamasa is etymologically related to Tamil, the language spoken by Tamil people. Southworth suggests that the name comes from Tamiz in GT. Tamiz, self-speak, or one's own speech. Zavalebal suggests an etymology of Tamiz, with tam meaning self or one's self, and bulsh having the connotation of unfolding sound. Alternatively, he suggests a derivation of Tamiz and LT, Tamiz and LT, asterisk *tav is an LT *tac is meaning in origin, the proper process. The term Thamasa was likely derived from the name of the ancient people Dravida and GT, Dramila and GT, Damila and GT, Tamila and GT, Tamila, while the English word Dravidian was first employed by Robert Caldwell in his book of comparative Dravidian grammar based on the usage of the Sanskrit word Dravida in the work Tantravartika by Kumari Labata. The word Dravida in Sanskrit has been historically used to denote geographical regions of southern India as whole, while some theories concern the direction of derivation between Tamis and Dravida. Such linguists as Savalebal assert that the direction is from Tamis to Dravida. The modern word Dravidian is devoid of any ethnic significance, and is only used to classify a linguistic family of the referred group. Origins. Although in modern times speakers of the various Dravidian languages have mainly occupied the southern portion of India, Dravidian speakers must have been widespread throughout the Indian subcontinent before Indo-Aryan migration into the subcontinent. The Brahui population of Balochistan in Pakistan has been taken by some as the linguistic equivalent of a relict population, perhaps indicating that Dravidian languages were formerly much more widespread and were supplanted by the incoming Indo-Aryan languages. Proto-Dravidian may have come to the subcontinent via migrations of agriculturalists from the Near East. The Indus Valley Civilization may have been the first manifestation of the Dravidian peoples and languages in South Asia. Further, they spread to South India. Ancestral components. Reich al. discern two major ancestral components in India, namely the ancestral North Indians, who are genetically close to Middle Easterners, Central Asians, and Europeans, and the ancestral South Indians, which are clearly distinct from Ani and not closely related to groups outside the subcontinent. Basu al. discern two additional components, ancestral Tibeto-Burmese and ancestral Austroasiatic, noting that the Asi and the Aaa were early settlers of India who differentiated after their arrival in India. The Ani and Asi mixed in India between 4,200 and 1,900 years ago, whereafter a shift to endogamy took place, possibly by the enforcement of social values and norms by the Hindu Gupta rulers. Northern Indians and higher castes are more related to West Eurasians, while Southern Indians and lower castes are less related to West Eurasians. Moorjani al. describe three scenarios regarding the bringing together of the two groups: migrations before the development of agriculture, migration of Western Asian people together with the spread of agriculture, maybe up to 4,600 years BP, migrations of Western Eurasians from 3,000 to 4,000 years BP. According to Metspalu, the Ani diverged from the present populations of West Eurasia 12,500 years ago, while according to Moorjani al., these groups were plausibly present unmixed in India before 2200 BCE. Near Eastern agricultural origins. According to David McAlpin, the Dravidian languages were brought to India by immigration into India from Elam. According to Renfrew and Cavalli Sforza, Proto-Dravidian was brought to India by farmers from the Iranian part of the Fertile Crescent. According to Mikhail Andronov, Dravidian languages were brought to India at the beginning of the 3rd millennium BCE. Kivizalde al. note that a small fraction of the West Eurasian mtDNA lineages found in Indian populations can be ascribed to a relatively recent admixture at California, 9,300 plus or minus 3,000 years before present, which coincides with the arrival to India of cereals domesticated in the Fertile Crescent, and lends credence to the suggested linguistic connection between the Elamite and Dravidic populations. According to Gallego Romero et al., the research on lactose tolerance in India suggests that the West Eurasian genetic contribution identified by Reich et al. Principally reflects gene flow from Iran and the Middle East. Gallego Romero notes that Indians who are lactose tolerant show a genetic pattern regarding this tolerance which is characteristic of the common European mutation. Quote, according to Romero, this suggests that the most common lactose tolerance mutation made a two-way migration out of the Middle East less than 10,000 years ago, while the mutation spread across Europe. Another explorer must have brought the mutation eastward to India, likely traveling along the coast of the Persian Gulf where other pockets of the same mutation have been found. According to Palanichami et al., the presence of mtDNA haplogroups and Y chromosome haplogroup in Dravidian populations indicates the spread of the Dravidian language into India from West Asia. Ascoparpola, who regards the Harappans to have been Dravidian, notes that Mehrgarh, to the west of the Indus River Valley, is a precursor of the Indus Valley Civilization, whose inhabitants migrated into the Indus Valley and became the Indus Valley Civilization. It is one of the earliest sites with evidence of farming and herding in South Asia. According to Lukács and Hemphill, while there is a strong continuity between the Neolithic and Chalcolithic cultures of Mehrgarh, dental evidence shows that the Chalcolithic population did not descend from the Neolithic population of Mehrgarh, which suggests moderate levels of gene flow. Quote, they further noted that the direct lineal descendants of the Neolithic inhabitants of Mehrgarh are to be found to the south and the east of Mehrgarh, in northwestern India and the western edge of the Deccan Plateau, with Neolithic Mehrgarh showing greater affinity with Chalcolithic Inamgaon, south of Mehrgarh, than with Chalcolithic Mehrgarh. History. Indus Valley Civilization. Dravidian identification. The Indus Valley Civilization, located both in Pakistan and India, is often identified as having been Dravidian. Cultural and linguistic similarities have been cited by researchers Henry Harris, Camels available, Ascoparpola and Iravath Mahadevan as being strong evidence for a Proto-Dravidian origin of the ancient Indus Valley Civilization. The discovery in Tamil Nadu of a late Neolithic stone celt allegedly marked with Indus signs has been considered by some to be significant for the Dravidian identification. Yuri Norizov surmised that the symbols represent a logosyllabic script and suggested, based on computer analysis, an underlying agglutinative Dravidian language as the most likely candidate for the underlying language. Norozov's suggestion was preceded by the work of Henry Harris, who suggested several readings of signs based on a Proto-Dravidian assumption. Linguist Ascoparpola writes that the Indus script and Harappan language are most likely to have belonged to the Dravidian family. Parpola led a Finnish team in investigating the inscriptions using computer analysis. Based on a Proto-Dravidian assumption, they proposed readings of many signs, some agreeing with the suggested readings of Harris and Norizov but disagreeing on several other readings. A comprehensive description of Parpola's work until 1994 is given in his book Deciphering the Indus Script. Decline and migration. Paleoclimatologists believe the fall of the Indus Valley Civilization and eastward migration during the late Harappan period was due to climate change in the region, with 200-year-old drought being the major factor. The Indus Valley Civilization seemed to slowly lose their urban cohesion, and the cities were gradually abandoned during the late Harappan period, followed by eastward migrations before the Indo-Aryan migration into the Indian subcontinent. Dravidian and Indo-Aryan interactions. J. Block and M. Witzel believe that the Indo-Aryans moved into an already Dravidian-speaking area after the oldest parts of the Rig Veda were already composed. The Dravidian language influenced the Indo-Aryan languages. Dravidian languages show extensive lexical borrowing, but only a few traits of structural borrowing from Indo-Aryan, whereas Indo-Aryan shows more structural than lexical borrowings from the Dravidian languages. Many of these features are already present in the oldest known Indo-Aryan language, the language of the Rig Veda, which also includes over a dozen words borrowed from Dravidian. The linguistic evidence for Dravidian impact grows increasingly strong as we move from the Samhitas down through the later Vedic works into the classical post-Vedic literature. This represents an early religious and cultural fusion, a synthesis between ancient Dravidians and Indo-Aryans. According to Thomason and Kaufman, there is strong evidence that Dravidian influenced Indic through shift, that is, native Dravidian speakers learning and adopting Indic languages. According to Erdős, the most plausible explanation for the presence of Dravidian structural features in Old Indo-Aryan is that the majority of earlier Old Indo-Aryan speakers had a Dravidian mother tongue which they gradually abandoned. Erdős, even though the innovative traits in Indic could be explained by multiple internal explanations, early Dravidian influence is the only explanation that can account for all of the innovations at once. Early Dravidian influence accounts for several of the innovative traits in Indic better than any internal explanation that has been proposed. According to Zvalebel, several scholars have demonstrated that pre-Indo-Aryan and pre-Dravidian bilingualism in India provided conditions for the far-reaching influence of Dravidian on the Indo-Aryan tongues in the spheres of phonology, syntax and vocabulary. With the rise of the Kuru kingdom, a process of Sanskritization started which influenced all of India, with the northern part becoming dominantly Indo-Aryan speaking. Early kingdoms. Ancient Dravidians had three monarchical states: Chola, Pandyas and Cheras, headed by kings called Vendar, and several tribal chieftainships, headed by the chiefs called by the general denomination Vel or Velir. Still lower at the local level there were clan chiefs called Kizar or Mana. The kings and chiefs were always in conflict with each other, mostly over territorial hegemony and property. The royal courts were mostly places of social gathering rather than places of dispensation of authority. They were centers for distribution of resources. Ancient Sangam literature and grammatical works Dalkapi, the 10 anthologies Patapatu, and the 8 anthologies Etutukai shed light on ancient Dravidian people. The kings and chieftains were patrons of the arts, and a significant volume of literature exists from this period. The literature shows that many of the cultural practices that are considered peculiarly Tamil date back to the classical period. Agriculture was important during this period, and there is evidence that networks of irrigation channels were built as early as the 3rd century BCE. Internal and external trade flourished, and evidence of significant contact with ancient Rome exists. Large quantities of Roman coins and signs of the presence of Roman traders have been discovered at Kuru and Arikamadu. There is evidence that at least 2 embassies were sent to the Roman Emperor Augustus by Pandya kings. Potsherds with Tamil writing have also been found in excavations on the Red Sea, suggesting the presence of merchants there. An anonymous 1st century traveler's account written in Greek, Periplus Maris Era 3e, describes the ports of the Pandya and Chera kingdoms in Damirika and their commercial activity in great detail. Periplus also indicates that the chief exports of the ancient Dravidians were pepper, malabathrum, pearls, ivory, silk, spikenard, diamonds, sapphires, and tortoise shell. According to Clarence Maloney, during the classical period Tamils also settled the Maldive Islands. These early kingdoms sponsored the growth of some of the oldest extant literature in Tamil. The classical literature, referred to as Sangam literature, is attributed to the period between 300 BCE and 300 CE. These Sangam poems paint the picture of a fertile land and of a people who were organized into various occupational groups. The governance of the land was through hereditary monarchies, although the sphere of the state's activities and the extent of the ruler's powers were limited through the adherence to the established order, dharma. The people were loyal to the kings, and roving bards and musicians and dancers gathered at the royal courts of the generous kings. The arts of music and dancing were highly developed and popular. Musical instruments of various types find mention in the Sangam poems. The amalgamation of the southern and the northern styles of dancing started during this period and is reflected fully in the epic Silapatikaram. Imperial and post-imperial periods. The names of the three dynasties, Cholas, Pandyas, and Cheras, are mentioned in Tamil Sangam literature, and grammatical works like Tolkapaya refers to them as the three glorified by heaven. Later, they are mentioned in Mauryan Empire's Pillars of Ashoka inscriptions. Among the kingdoms, which though not subject to Ashoka, were on allied terms with him, the king of Kalinga, Kharavela, who ruled around 150 BCE, mentioned in the famous Hathagumfa inscription of the confederacy of the kingdoms that had existed for over 100 years. The Cholas, Pandyas, Cheras, and Pallavas were followers of Hinduism, though for a short while some of them seem to have embraced Jainism and later converted to Hinduism. Buddhism flourished alongside Hinduism and Jainism. The earliest Buddhist Mahayana Sutra was developed in southern India during this period. After the fall of the Mauryan Empire, the kingdoms were allied with the Satavahana dynasty. The kings of the Satavahana dynasty were the earliest rulers who issued coins with Dravidian languages. These early kingdoms sponsored the growth of some of the oldest extant literature in Tamil. The classical literature, referred to as Sangam literature, is attributed to the period between 300 BCE and 300 CE. The poems of Sangam literature, which deal with emotional and material topics, were categorized and collected into various anthologies during the medieval period. These Sangam poems paint the picture of a fertile land and of a people who were organized into various occupational groups. The governance of the land was through hereditary monarchies, although the sphere of the state's activities and the extent of the ruler's powers were limited through the adherence to the established order. Although the Pallava records can be traced from the 2nd century AD, they did not rise to prominence as an imperial dynasty until the 6th century. They transformed the institution of the kingship into an imperial one, and sought to bring vast amounts of territory under the direct rule. The Bhakti movement in Hinduism was founded at this time, and rose along with the growing influence of Jainism and Buddhism. The Pallavas pioneered the building of large, ornate temples in stone which formed the basis of the Dravidian temple architecture. They came into conflict with the Kannada Chalukyas of Badami. During this period, the great Badami Chalukya king Pulakeshi II extended the Chalukya Empire up to the northern extents of the Pallava kingdom and defeated the Pallavas in several battles. Pallava Narasimhavarman, however, reversed this victory in 642 by attacking and occupying Badami temporarily. However, a later Chalukya king Vikramaditya II took revenge by repeated invasions of the territory of Tondamandalam and his subsequent victories over Pallava Nandivarman II and the annexation of Kanchipuram. The South Indian ruler Vikramaditya II also defeated the Arab invaders and protected southern India. The Pandava dynasty was overthrown in the 9th century by the imperial Kannada Rashtrakutas who ruled from Gulbarga. Amoghavasha was the greatest king of the South Indian Rashtrakuta dynasty, who was described by an Arab scholar as one of the 4 great kings of the world in the 9th century. King Krishna III, the last great Rashtrakuta king, consolidated the empire so that it stretched from the Narmada River to the Kaveri River and included the northern Tamil country while levying tribute on the king of Ceylon. Under Rajaraja Chola and his son Rajendra Chola, the Cholas became dominant in the 10th century and established an empire covering most of South India and Sri Lanka. The empire had strong trading links with Chinese Song dynasty and Southeast Asia. The Cholas defeated the Eastern Chalukya and expanded their empire to the Ganges. They conquered the coastal areas around the Bay of Bengal and turned it into a Chola lake. Rajendra Chola improved his father's fleet and created the first notable marine of the Indian subcontinent. The Chola navy conquered the Srivijaya Empire of Indonesia and Malaysia and secured the sea trade route to China. Cholas exacted tribute from Thailand and the Khmer Kingdom of Cambodia. The power of the Cholas declined around the 13th century and the Pandyan Empire enjoyed a brief period of resurgence thereafter during the rule of Sundara Pandya. The Pandyan dynasty reached its peak in the 13th century during the reign of Sadavarman Sundara Pandyan I and Maravarman Kulasekara Pandyan I. The Pandyan Empire was threatened by the constant Islamic invasions of South India. During the 15th and 16th century, the Vijayanagara Empire became the dominant power of South India. The Vijayanagara Empire reached its zenith during the reign of the South Indian Emperor Krishnadevaraya, who defeated the Turkic invaders of the Bahmani Sultanate. After the decline of the Vijayanagara Empire in 1646, South India was dominated by small states like the Nayak dynasty. The western Tamil lands became increasingly politically distinct from the rest of the Tamil lands after the Chola and Pandya empires lost control over them in the 13th century. They developed their own distinct language and literature, which increasingly grew apart from Tamil, evolving into the modern Malayalam language by the 15th century. Language and people. Language. The most commonly spoken Dravidian languages are Telugu, Tamil, Kannada, Malayalam, and Brahui and Tulu. There are 3 subgroups within the Dravidian language family: North Dravidian, Central Dravidian, and South Dravidian, matching for the most part the corresponding regions in the Indian subcontinent. Dravidian grammatical impact on the structure and syntax of Indo-Aryan languages is considered far greater than the Indo-Aryan grammatical impact on Dravidian. Some linguists explain this anomaly by arguing that Middle Indo-Aryan and New Indo-Aryan were built on a Dravidian substratum. There are also hundreds of Dravidian loanwords in Indo-Aryan languages, and vice versa. Dravidian ethnic groups. The largest Dravidian ethnic groups are the Tamil people from Tamil Nadu, Puducherry and Sri Lanka, the Kannada people from Karnataka, the Telugu people from Andhra Pradesh, the Malayalam people from Kerala, and the Tulu people from Karnataka.